Good morning. This video is going to be about muscle identification. So the three different types of muscle, being able to identify them via tissue samples, and then also identifying gross muscles, specific muscles that we've chosen, plus knowing what those muscles do. Just a quick reminder, there are three types of muscles: skeletal muscle, cardiac muscle, and smooth muscle. So look in the folder at these tissue samples that are a little bit bigger and easier for you to see, because you are responsible for being to identify which sample goes to which type of muscle. Skeletal muscles are striated, very multinucleated, meaning there's more than one nucleus per fiber. They're under voluntary control, meaning you can consciously control these actions or activities of these muscles, and they're usually found attached to bones. Smooth muscles are non-striated. They have one nucleus per fiber. They are under involuntary control and are usually found covering the walls of your internal organs and blood vessels. And then cardiac muscle is only going to be found in the heart. It is also striated, one nucleus per muscle fiber, and under involuntary control. Before we get into identifying the muscles, a couple characteristics about muscles and the composition of skeletal muscles. All muscles are across at least one joint. So remember, joints are going to be the combination of muscle, bones, ligaments, tendons, cartilage, those things that allow movement to occur. Muscles have two ends to them. There is an origin and an insertion. The origin is the bone or the structure at which the muscle is anchored to. And then the insertion is the bone or the structure that the muscle actually moves. So origin is anchor point, insertion is moving. You will always go from insertion to origin. It's one way to kind of keep track of what is the origin and what is the insertion. Origins and insertions can be bones. They can also be tendons or aponeuroses, which are sheets of tendon-like connective tissue, versus tendons, which are kind of the cord-like. Or they could also be other types of structures. During contraction, the insertion will always move towards the origin. So that's kind of what I was talking about in that last slide. So the bicep, the origin is up here, and the insertion is going to be on the radius, and so you know the insertion is always going to move that bone towards the origin, so it's bringing that radius towards. This is a relaxed muscle right here, and then this is showing this contraction. So when you flex a muscle, you're going to be decreasing this angle between your two bones. Muscles cannot push. They can only pull, and muscles work in opposing pairs. So when one muscle is actively contracting or flexing, then another muscle has to be extending or doing the opposite movement. So if one muscle is adducting, another one has to be abducting. So the reason why we have muscles that work in opposing pairs is because it allows for controlled movement. If you didn't have something to kind of counteract the activity of a muscle, then your bones and stuff would be flying all over the place uncontrolled. So this idea that muscles work in pairs with a prime mover, which is the muscle that's actively being moved, and then the antagonist, which is the muscle that's counteracting that mover, prime mover, allows you to have controlled movement. Think about a bicep and tricep here, right? When you flex, do an arm curl right now as you're taking notes. When you flex, your bicep is the prime mover. It's responsible for producing the bulk of the movement, but your tricep is the antagonist. It is the muscle that's countering this. So as the bicep flexes, the tricep then extends, and this allows for controlled movement. And muscles can be both. So when you extend your arm out, then your tricep now becomes the prime mover, and your bicep becomes the antagonist. So opposing pairs, muscles always work in opposing pairs. A synergist is going to contract with and stabilize the prime mover. So again, they're just going to work together to help produce a smooth movement. We can name skeletal muscles based on, or we can figure out information about skeletal muscles based on the name or how we name them. So for instance, the external oblique, so that's going to be found right here, your outermost abdominal muscle. External means it's on the outside. Oblique means that the muscle fibers are running in a diagonal direction. So if they were running back and forth, we would call it transverse. So like your transverse abdominis right here, abdominis, it's in the abdominal cavity. transverse because the muscle fibers are running horizontal. And rectus is going to be fibers that run up and down. So this is your rectus abdominis. Again, you can tell rectus meaning that the fibers run up and down, abdominis found in your abdominal cavity. So by looking at the words of a muscle, you can get some information about it. In this case, we learned where it was located and the direction of the muscle fibers. We can also get other information. So for instance, size. So a maximus, a minimus, a longus gives us clue for sizes. Gluteus maximus, gluteus minimus, adductor longus. These are going to be long muscles. You can get number of origins. So bicep, triceps, quadriceps are going to be muscles that have, 2 for bi, tri for 3. Those are the number of anchoring points they have. We can get the location of attachments. So the Sternocleidoid Mastoid, which we'll talk about here in a second. Sterno is sternum, cleido means clavicle, mastoid is the mastoid process. So you can kind of get an idea of where this muscle is located. We can name muscles according to the shape of the muscle. So the trapezius is a trapezoid, the deltoid is a triangle. And then we can also name them based on their action. So if an adductor, it's going to adduct that structure. An abductor, abductor, would abduct it. A flexor is going to flex. An extensor is going to extend. So by looking at the name of the muscle, you can get a lot of different information. So let's start going over some of these muscles real quickly. They should be kind of color coordinated for you to follow along with. And some of these muscles we'll see on different viewpoints of the different diagrams. So you'll see them more than once, but just so that you have a good vantage point of what it looks like from different angles. You are responsible for being able to identify the muscle and also knowing what the muscle does. So we'll start with the Sternocleidoid Mastoid. This is the big muscle that crosses your neck. There's one on each side here. You can see it's a anchoring point. It's going to be on the mastoid process, if you remember from our bone unit, and it will move your clavicle. Its job, this is the yes-no muscle, right? Because it's going to flex your head, like if you bring your head forward, and then it's going to rotate your head. So when you say yes or no, this is the muscle that's going to be involved in that. The trapezius, there'll be a better view of this when we look at the posterior muscles, but this is going to be the muscle of the top of your back, neck and top of the back. Its job is to extend the neck, head, and it moves the scapula. Down here in blue, you can see the beginning of the deltoid muscle, which is the muscle of your lateral shoulder. Its job is to adduct the arm, and then the pectoralis major you can see right here, letter J, is the upper chest muscle. And again, these you will all see in a different view a little bit better in a second. Muscles of the face. Okay, so these are all the muscles that are involved in getting yourself a date, right? The occipital frontalis muscle is going to be responsible for raising your eyebrows. So, when you look across the bar and you see someone and you raise your eyebrows at them like, you look interesting. Okay, look at frontalis because it's in the frontal bone, and which covers the frontal lobe of the brain. Makes a little bit of sense. The orbiculus oculi, you look across, you raise your eyebrows, and then you decide you're going to wink at them to bring their attention. This is the eye muscle that's going to allow you to wink or close your eyes. So this is orbicularis oculi. Then you decide that now that you've gotten their attention, you're going to give them a big smile. This is going to be the Zygomaticus, which is in yellow here, which is going to raise and elevate your upper lip, causing you to smile. Then the orbicularis oris is the closing the lips, so this might allow you to blow a kiss across the bar at that particular person. And then once that person starts to talk and you decide that you are not interested in them and you want them to stop talking, you would want them to be activating their masseter muscle, which elevates the mandible or closes it, located right here in blue. And then the temporalis, again on the temporal bone, on the temporal lobe of the brain here. This is going to also help close your jaw. So the next time you are annoyed with someone, instead of telling them to be quiet, you can just say, hey, can you flex your masseter or your temporalis muscle, please? Which would then shut your mouth. Here again is another image or another view of the Sternocleidoid Mastoid. So you might want to write on here posterior view because we're looking now at the back of the body. So this is the back of the forearm over here, and this is the back. So again, here's your deltoid. We got a small view of it earlier, but the big triangle-shaped muscle that makes up your lateral shoulder, and its job is to adduct the arm, ABD duct. So ABD duct, remember, is to move away from, versus adduction. Adduction is to bring towards your body. Here's the trapezius, so it's a really, really large muscle in your upper back, and its job is to extend the neck, move the scapula. The latissimus dorsi is the long, big, large muscle on the lower back. Adduct and extend your arm. Triceps brachii is going to be in the back of your upper arm. And then the extensors of your wrists will be the back of your forearm. So these all have individual names to them. You just need to know in general that these are the extensor muscles. So all the muscles of the shoulders and back's job is to extend things. Going to the abdominal then, the rectus abdominis. Well, let's start with the external oblique here. External oblique is the outermost abdominal muscle on the side. If we external because it's on the outside, oblique because it runs diagonal. So if we cut the external oblique, then the next layer in is the internal oblique. And then if we cut the internal oblique and flap that open, it would be the transverse abdominis. So these are running side to side. And then if we cut that and peel it back, we would have the rectus abdominis, which are the muscles responsible for your six-pack abs, right? So there are 4 layers of muscles in the abdomen, and all of them are going to flex the vertebral column and compress the abdomen. Going to the muscles of the shoulder and chest, again, here is your deltoid that's colored, your sternocleidoid mastoid, and your trapezius, which aren't listed down here because we already identified them, and you might want to put anterior because, again, we're looking at the anterior view, but here's your bicep, here's the pectoralis major. Biceps is going to flex your arm at the elbow. Pectoralis is going to adduct and flex the arm. Your intercostal muscles, which will be very deep of the ribs, and that's going to help raise your rib cage when you take a big deep breath in. And then in the front of your forearm then are going to be the flexor muscles, and they're going to flex your wrist and hand. And again, you can see that there's more than one flexor muscles. You just need to know that the general group of muscles here are called flexors. Muscles of the anterior hip and thigh. You are going to write down on here that this is the right, muscles of the anterior hip and thigh. You are going to write down that this is your left leg here. So this is your left leg, this is your left leg, okay? This right here, which will be pictured on another slide, is your gracilis. So this is the medial side. This is the medial side. This is the lateral side. Like, I think people get confused that this is one of your legs and this is the other. It's not. It's the same leg. This is showing the superficial muscles. This is showing the deep muscle. The superficial muscles of your left leg. So the quadriceps are made up of 4 muscles. The rectus femoris, the vastus lateralis, so lateralis because it's on the lateral side, and the vastus medialis. If we cut the rectus femoris, there's another muscle underneath that makes up the 4th muscle in the quadriceps, which is the vastus intermedius. You don't need to know that one, but those are the quads, quad for 4, meaning that there are 4 muscles involved in that group. Their job is all to extend the leg at the knee. Then up here in letter D, you'll have to color that in because I forgot to. That is the iliopsoas. That's job is to flex your hip. Along the side here is the tensor fasciae latae. That's job is to adduct the thigh. And then if you cut all of these quadriceps and flip them back, you'll be able to see these deep muscles right here. This is the adductor magnus, so letter N, and this is the adductor longus. This is the gracilis. We'll find it on the next page, but it is kind of a nice diagram of this particular muscle. It's going to run the medial length of your leg. And then looking at your lower leg front, the front muscle here, which allows you to bring your toes up towards your calf, is called the tibialis anterior. All right, so this is going to be then your right posterior leg. So write that down so you can know that you're on the right side here. Right leg, okay? This gracilis is always on the medial side. So this is also the right leg, right? This is on the medial side. Again, this is the superficial muscles on top. These are the deep muscles if we cut these and flip them up to see these. Your gluteus maximus is right here, and your gluteus medius is right on top. So this is going to extend the leg at the hip, and this is going to adduct the thigh. The muscles of your hamstrings would be your bicep femoris here, your semitendinosus, and then your semimembranosus, and then your gracilis, which I mentioned here, and then the adductor magnus would be located over here. Here's also the adductor magnus. Letter D here would be your muscles from the quad. These would be the vastus lateralis. So you already identified them on a different thing. So again, right leg, superficial, medial side, right leg. This is the medial side here, and deeper muscles. And then on the back you have your gastrocnemius, your big calf muscle, and underneath that sits the soleus, and its job is to allow you to point your toes. Last, on your diagram packet, you can use this blank diagram to help you color and study for the things, but I did want to point out the brachialis right here because we didn't have a good image of it on the arm muscle picture that we had. It's located on the lateral side of the bicep, and its job again is to help flex the arm at the elbow. It would be one of those synergist muscles.